All right, everybody,
I look
welcome.
squished. There
There.
we go. I still look squished.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to Game Wisdom Live for the week of April 28, 2019. I am Josh Placer, and if I can hopefully try and get Rob, I'm not sure how I can stretch you out more. Let's see, maybe this will work. There we go. Get Rob's head or get him kind of proportioned a little bit better there. But we
I
got.
look thinner. That's important.
All right, but we got a great cast in terms of talking about game design topics here. And there's certainly a lot to go over. But let me introduce him for real. Please welcome my co host, video game producer, Robert Leach.
Hello. Good to be back again.
Hey, Rob, how are you doing? We missed you last week. I think it was your birthday.
Yeah, it's my birthday, and of course, had family stuff for the Easter holiday as well. But yeah, it was a good little break. I took a couple of days off of work as well, so I'm refreshed and ready to go.
Great.
How was the cast last week?
It was pretty good. We had a lot of topics to go over here. I'm just trying to adjust the. There we go.
Hey, news. It's not broke. I just haven't had a chance to buy.
There we go. Got it fixed just as he was saying it. But yeah, it has been another very interesting week here. I've been starting to get things together for the Josh box. If you missed a little video I posted on the Discord, I have my whole little arts setup ready to go. So there's only a few days left in April for anyone to donate or pledge $25. I think we are up to 4 or 5 boxes so far. So we'll see if anybody gets any last minute mega donations to get those boxes. I'm gonna make like little painting videos of me trying to put them together.
So what goes in the boxes?
I'm gonna be giving it
I'm
like a
unaware.
little thumb drive that has like some of my favorite podcasts I've done over the years in them,
Sounds good.
and of course like the little box will be like hand painted and stuff like that.
You can go
Uh,
back in time to our first chat and see how that compares.
oh yeah, that should be a lot of fun going through all. Got like 7 years of podcasts I'm gonna have to sift through.
Sheesh.
Let's see. I'm waiting to hear back news regarding when they're going to be starting production on book number 2 very soon there. So that's going to be very exciting. I'll know an official date for when it will be out, and I can let people know. And hopefully this week I will hear back regarding book number 3, what they're going to be doing in terms of the contract and all that.
It's very cool. Onwards and upwards.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. Hopefully, trying to get a little bit more back in terms of doing some more of writing and such, but it's still going very slowly. I think it's always a challenge, I think, to email a lot of these websites about putting out articles. Because I really don't email too many sites rarely about, I have an idea. I've been trying to post more regarding like platforming based things. So we'll see if I get anyone interested.
Yeah, you are the knowledgeable platform individual.
Yeah, for at least a few more months. But we have a few big topics to discuss, and we'll see where things take us. So I guess for you, Rob, have you had a chance to play any new games lately?
Again, as my usual answer goes, nothing new. The one game I have been playing that I had mentioned I was going to try to get back to last time we were on was Parkitect, and I have been playing that relatively frequently the last couple of weeks and enjoying that. The last time I had played it was still alpha or perhaps beta, but it was very slim in terms of features, and now it seems like a very robust game, very much harkening back to the Roller Coaster Tycoons 1 and 2, which is nice, and it makes it so much easier because I also play RCT2 on my phone, which is very awkward and difficult to do. This is way easier, but I still prefer, of course, Planet Coaster when I have a real PC in front of me. Nothing against my poor little laptop, though.
How did Parkitect come out? I haven't played that game since like very early. This is I think like alpha stage.
Yeah, it's very nice. I mean, they do incorporate a few mechanics that are just that are new to any other game in that genre, which is interesting to work with. It just adds another little thing you have to balance. One thing I think they did a good job of is in this game, you don't worry about employee salary. It just happens on its own, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't. You can train them, but they also level up on their own as well. But they add in this new type of employee, which is called a hauler, someone who carries inventory from the base to various stores. So every time you build a shop, you can't just start selling immediately. You actually have to set up a path and wait for that inventory to get to the shop. And if it's a complex shop, multiple things of inventory before you can actually sell anything. So it's a very strange little balance thing to take care of and understand. But I like that spin, and it's a unique feature that's only in Parkitect. I'm sure Planet Coaster is going to steal it, but we'll wait until that happens. Actually, no Irish. Just a quarter in the British side of things. But my background is a relative mystery to me. It's just a mishmash of European everything. So
Let's see. Did you have a chance to check out the new Anno game?
I have not. I haven't played Anno in all way too long. I need to revisit it. But yeah, I mean, I do enjoy that style. I just wish I had more time. One of these days, I will always say one of these days, and one day I'll mean it.
Yep, I'm hoping to either try to get a press key or wait for a sale to resist the urge on it.
Yeah.
Of course, Mortal Kombat 11 came out, and we'll be talking more about kind of its games as a service model later in the stream. Let's see. Well, we did the indie game spotlight stream the other night. It was all right. We got a lot of very simple kind of titles. Like they kind of felt more like prototypes or early concepts than full games, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm actually curious. I haven't really looked into the indie scene in a long time, and I'm curious if it's anyone's thoughts on it. Has it waned? Is it still as strong as ever in terms of quality, or is it kind of like you just it's just still there? It depends on people's opinions, I guess. But is it still robust, or is it just very watered down? I guess is the base question.
Well, at least from the games that I've played and shown here, I think again it still feels very mixed. Like we've seen some very impressive indie games. We looked at that Kid Baby Star Child, which is like a 3D platformer. Monster Sanctuary, which is basically like Pokemon meets Metroidvania, which was really great. But then there's still a lot of games that definitely seem to come from either first time developers or like people who didn't really get a chance to play test their titles. And unfortunately, you can see that in a lot of like like the games that are being put on like each IO or stuff that just randomly appears on Steam these days.
Yeah, and that's always been the problem. I think now that it's easier than ever. Oh, I'm looking at Star Child now. That looks really sharp.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not much of a platformer, but I'll stick it on my wish list. Um, yeah, it's easier than ever to make a game, and so if someone just wants to venture in and say, hey, you know what, I want to try my hand at this,
Mm-hmm.
making a game kind of requires the dedication of all your time and efforts and resources, and it's hard to do that, and it's really easy to just make a game, get to the end, and say, you know what, I'm kind of done with this, or it looks good enough to me, or I can't afford QA, but I'm going to release it anyway and fix it after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to say that, and it's very tempting to say that. But yeah, when you're making a game, and you want to sell it, you really have to dive in.
Mm-hmm. And
It's good to know that the established indies are still going strong. But yeah, the hobbyist, it's that hobbyist and student kind of spin that
mm-hmm.
does drag it down a little bit because students are learning. They think they know it all, but they're still learning, and so they release something that they think is great, but it's not.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that; it's very harsh, but it's true. Your first project is always one that once you gain experience, you look back on, you're like, oh my god, I worked on this, I made this. So it is. It's a kind of a. I'm glad that they're getting experience, but I'm also sad that it's flooding the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, there's just so many games being released. Like now we have each IO, and the problem, like you said, and I think like news says as well, is that like we see these games get put onto stores, and it's kind of like, why did you put it up here? You know, like you said, it's like kind of trying to sell your first student film project and putting it like in a major store. Like all you're kind of doing is just like cluttering up the storefront at that point.
Yeah, and again, I've said it before. I don't want anyone to get the impression that I'm immune to this. A hobbyist is someone who doesn't dedicate their time to the project. They just kind of work on it in their off hours, and they treat it less seriously, not as a money making venture, as their own sole
Mm-hmm.
method of income. But I don't want to get off the impression that I'm immune from this. I released something for the first time and it was terrible. No, I've done that in the past. It's learning from your mistakes and hopefully being more mature about it as you go on, and realizing that yes, you are cluttering up a marketplace and ruining it for other developers. But yeah, you can only do what you can do. You learn from it and you move on.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, there's
And
still real. Go ahead.
I was just going to comment on what News just said about schools and stuff, and it's a weird kind of thing. It's that eternal. The teacher is teaching a subject without still being a member of that industry. Actively a member of the industry. So it's so strange because a student will idolize a teacher and say that is the way, that is the thing. That is how it's done, when in reality, maybe things have shifted in the business, in the industry. So you learn some good things, but you have to apply it into the modern marketplace, and that's something you have to learn on the fly.
Mm-hmm. And I think like another big point though is that there still really is no such thing as kind of formal, formal game design in terms of what it means to build a video game. Again, everybody has
Yeah,
their own interpretation of it, and
yeah. Sorry, I stumbled. You go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, and like everyone thinks that they know the perfect solution, or like everyone thinks like you can't really teach it. Like they focus more on the programming and the art side, but a lot of people forget that there are good UI elements. There's good design philosophy that goes into the best games.
Absolutely, and it's something that is struggling. I've worked it for way too many companies, and even from everything from game design to the importance of that various companies put on design and project management and production. It's different everywhere. In fact, you've heard the term agile development,
Mm-hmm.
and that term is different everywhere. Everyone has kind of the same idea,
Mm-hmm.
core idea of what it means, but no one applies it the same. That means I've never been at two companies that think of it in the same way, design wise, production wise, at all. And so, hey, you do get companies that say, "Well, we're doing it the right way." Well, every company says that, and it's frustrating to have worked at all these places that do it very differently because I myself have my own styles, and integrating myself into everyone else's expectations is very difficult. So
Mm-hmm.
it's fun, and I don't know if the industry is ever going to get to the point where it has one established method of production or method of design, or at least even a small number. It's going to be difficult until there's one school or a couple of schools that use the exact same principles. Maybe, Josh, your textbooks are going to pave the way to giving everyone some kind of baseline of design process.
I like a sharks example there. Of course, yeah, that's always a winner in the market. And I don't know. I
I
think
was not aware of this second year students teaching first year students. That seems dangerous.
hmm I think I'm going to be more on the pessimistic side and say that I think it's going to be a very long time until that happens because the game industry really doesn't like setting established rules. I mean, we
Yeah.
still arguing over what is technically a video game. Are visual novel games considered video games? We played a game on the Indie Game Spotlight last night that was literally just like a choose your own adventure book with no pictures. That was the entire game. Like, do we consider that a video game?
That is a weird thing. That is the eternal philosophical question for game design or for video games: is this a game or is this not a game? Um, it actually kind of reminds me of filmmaking. It seems like there's a relatively established protocol for producing a film, but in games, yeah, to get there, I don't know if it's ever going to happen.
Hmm. Yeah. And I guess like I was like telling people, like it still seems like game design is not really thought of as an established discipline because it's not really something you can show off to people. I think like in the same way as a program or an art.
Yeah, it's true. Again, I've known a lot of very, very good designers, and they all have slightly different methods and approaches.
Yeah.
Some are more detail oriented, some are more big picture oriented, and they both have their own strengths and weaknesses for sure. But you do. I've never met someone except for the indie developer side of things who kind of has to handle everything. Um, yeah, how do you integrate a type of designer into your company? How do
Mm-hmm.
you surround them with a philosophy that embraces their style?
Yeah.
That's difficult because a designer can be the most integral piece of your puzzle or one of the least, and it depends about how you run your company and what kind of game you're making.
Yeah. I mean, like I think a good example that would be someone like Edmund McMillan. When we did the podcast talking about his design and what he does with the Binding of Isaac and Bumbo and stuff like that. Like at this point, he is a very recognized name in the independent space. But I could not imagine. I don't think he could ever imagine working in a studio. Like Edmund McMillan working at EA are like two things that I think will never happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've actually run into this situation where an indie developer who had a lot of success
Mm-hmm.
works for a big company. The guy who did, oh gosh, it was one of those. It was one of the first platform jumping games,
Yeah.
vertical jumping games on a mobile. Um, I can't remember. It was. Oh, I can't remember. It had a very like pencil sketch look to it. Um, yeah, he was bought out by Disney, his game and
Mm-hmm.
him, and yeah, it was. I didn't get to talk to him too much, but it did seem like he was uncomfortable as a cog uh, in the
Yep.
machine. So yeah, it's the mentality. I tried to actually rope back one of my guys I worked with in the indie space into working
Mm-hmm.
in the larger company that I'm at now, and yeah, he was like, nope, nope, not gonna happen. Probably smartly.
Yep. And again, like goes back to what you were just saying, Rob, that like it's not like game design is not like something like an art or kind of style. You can say you're an impressionist or cubist or you're an expert in I don't know woodworking. Like you can't say I'm a master of Will Wright's style of game design. Oh, I'm the expert in Sid Meier, and I'm the Suda 51 over here. Things like that.
Yeah, yeah, and the different types of games, like you say, Sid Meier, you say Will Wright, like um, I mean, you could even go to like the whole id side of things. Like those are just very different, and the technology is dictated as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
you go back to the Atari days. If Atari days, when you go to the like an E3 convention or any convention that might showcase retro stuff, you can look at some of their design booklets, and boy, is it those have to be super detailed because it's all math. It's there's no like implementing assets as they are today, so it's a little strange.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe talking about game schools like next week or something. That's a whole podcast there or a whole vidcast.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like a good hour and a half, I think, easily.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe somebody remind us. That'll be our topic for next week.
sounds good.
Oh, I'm going to be trying something different. I'm going to. Josh suggested maybe to try and leave these podcasts up, just leave them up for people to watch on the channel. So I'm going to see how things go there. Excuse me, and if there's any interest. because it's hard to tell, again, what people are watching and what attracts them and such. So
Mm.
we'll see how things go. So for anyone new watching this record right now, thanks for tuning in. But yeah, I guess one last point about game design, then we'll move on to another topic. Yeah, I just don't know what will you know I guess push people towards that. Do you think it's kind of like an idea of like the new generation taking over and the old generation going away, or do you think it will have to be like a specific event?
I think that one of the items that can bring design to a more like singular area is everybody buying into the same design software. Now you got teams that still make their own engines. You got teams that use Unreal or oh gosh, what's it's blanking on me. But any of those specific
Mm-hmm.
engines, and if you're using Unreal, well, you're kind of honed into a very specific tool set,
Yep.
and it's how you utilize that tool set. And there's a lot of established ideals and whatnot. And I think that community kind of pushes them towards a singular, or at least in a relative same mindset. And so that's where you're probably going to get a lot of that established guidelines and styles. And so when you're making your own engine, you have to create your own style on the fly, or at least the tool sets that those
Yep.
developers make are going to be catered to what they need. Whereas you have Unreal, and everything's kind of catered to what the community wants, and certainly you can write your own stuff, but still you're like locked into the core concepts that exist within the Unreal Engine.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's what's going to do it, is just everyone buying into just a couple of different engines of making their games, and that'll keep everybody kind of, you can leap from one company to the other and still be relatively assured that their process is going to be similar to what you're used to.
I can imagine right now Mike is having like a small fit as you're saying that, Rob, about everyone just focusing on a few game engines.
Oh yeah, no, I mean there's definitely like, I don't that's never going to happen. There's too many types of games out there. Like doing a 2D game in Unreal or something like that, I don't know about how easy it is compared to like a game maker or one of those things. So someone else would be able to talk to that. But if I'm a programmer and I know what I'm doing, maybe I go with Unreal. If I'm a hobbyist or even just starting from scratch indie, then maybe I'm going with the game maker or something that makes more sense to me. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, news exactly. It's not easy. You got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. And the question is just how things shake up in the end. Because I guess getting back to what kind of started us down this topic, again, we hear all this talk about how independent developers need to rise up. We need to have more places to go. And then when I look on Agile, I'm going to actually adopt Agile into kind of like our weird games segment later on. That a lot of the stuff, it doesn't look like it would be like marketable to like anyone, or enough that you could actually make a living off of these games.
Yeah, I don't know how indies do it these days. I'll be honest. When I got out of it, the publishing side, it was already flooded. Like it was already hard, and I don't know. Starting from fresh, you're a new indie developer with like no background, and you have the great idea, and it's going to be polished and whatnot, and you release a very good game. Yeah, I don't know how you get found. Like it doesn't matter HIO or Steam or any of these new start markets that are opening up.
Mm.
It's I don't know how you do it. It's luck of the draw sometimes.
Yeah.
I shrug and I pity anyone who's doing it now. Certainly, I'm going to try and do it in the future on my own when I get to a retirement area. But trying to make a living as a younger person in that space is tough.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
news exactly.
as we've said before, it seems like there's safer money being a YouTuber or a streamer than is the person actually making the games.
Possibly now, it like if you are a YouTuber or streamer who has some level of success, making a game suddenly becomes super easy. Not making the game, but selling it, because you already have a base, you can sell to. But as an indie developer who doesn't have a social media presence, then you're just SOL. You have to have that presence before you can market.
Mm-hmm.
Like marketing your game, you have to do it by yourself. No one's going to help you. So that is like key, is having a base, having a good number of people who will help you market, or at least be interested in buying your game.
Yeah. And even then, understanding what it means to design the game in the first place. When I looked at the indie spotlight, like the funniest thing is that the one thing I noticed that all the games had in common, except for the one that was just like a more of a novel game, none of them had any kind of tutorial or like onboarding practice. Get someone to understand what it is to play this game. And like when we look at that, like for the games that we play or what we understand, that's like design 101 right there. You need to have something to show someone how to play your game. But again, main and pen developers just like kind of like just like shoot from the hip when it comes to their design.
Yeah, and that is another part about design, and designers, is that there is this giant creative like aspect to it, and you're more concerned about getting your like vision out there than you are about getting the how to out there. Like the
Yeah.
how to is like you're going to want my game and you're going to buy it because you want it. I'm not going to teach it to you because I don't care about that part. I care about the vision being out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then Draken, yeah, marketing is like the biggest thing. It is like you have to think of all of those aspects if you want to make a fully fleshed out title.
Yep.
The bigger companies already know about this stuff. That's already in their project pipeline. But yeah, an indie developer doesn't think about that because it's not their vision. Their vision doesn't include things like the credits
Or a
or the
tutorial.
tutorial or the poster or the videos that you have to make to sell it. Like all of that stuff that should be kind of thought of throughout the process just isn't there until the very end, when it's too late to do some of it.
Mm-hmm.
Testing, exactly.
Yep.
I even thought about the core component that got me a job in the industry in the first place. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
very
Yep.
good.
And like with that Kid Baby game, like it sounds like they didn't really do a lot in terms of play testing the game. But that's something that's in early access. Like that's understandable. If you're not play testing your game you release at 1.0, that's another story.
Yeah, yeah, and I think if we get into the Mortal Kombat thing, I can talk a lot more to this particular aspect of testing. But there are pieces of testing that require just a large number of people,
Yep.
and you're one person, five people working on the game. Maybe you have some friends and family who are willing to work on it, and not only are willing to work on it, but actually know how to communicate issues and problems and what to look for. Those you still are short by probably 30-40 people, so it's not an easy undertaking, but it requires, like, you still need to give it that little bit of care before putting it out there.
Mm-hmm. And the news is
That's a good comment. Put that on a bumper sticker.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. News.
Yeah, and to that comment again, like a lot of people do not handle criticism well, especially when it comes to video games. Like video games, cooking, art, anything like that. Like you say that there's issues with it, like you're basically describing like you're like insulting their child to a lot of people like that.
Yeah, it is, and that's another aspect of the creative process that a lot of people aren't used to. It's the feedback.
Oh
You get
yes.
negative feedback. Ooh, it hurts. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. It's a little insulting. But if you've only now started doing it, and you're only now starting to get negative feedback, where everything that's been all the people close to you have been saying, "Oh, this is
Oh,
great. I'm so proud of you," etc.
it's the
And then you put
best
it out
game
there.
ever.
It's the best thing ever. I've never seen it. And then someone out there is like, "Nah, whatever," and that's painful. But you got to learn to deal with
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah. But again, like for a lot of people out there, they don't really understand the basics when it comes to these games. And like I hate to be like that. I hate to be mean about it, but I mean, there's a lot of games that we've played and a lot that I've seen on each IO or developers have sent me where it's kind of like, did you do any research about how to make this kind of game beforehand? Or did you just sit there one day and go, I'm just going to make this and, close myself off from the rest of the world? Because again, like, it's one of those very weird things when it comes to design. Like, for myself, for you, Rob, and I'm sure for our audience right here, like, we play a lot of video games. We see, like, a lot of the basic practices. And, like, for us, like, if your game doesn't have a tutorial or doesn't let you, key bind or even just have some basic understanding, it's like, it's like trying to sell me a car without having a steering wheel. You're saying, oh, I'm this big famous auteur, I'm going to revolutionize cars, but if your car doesn't have a steering wheel, how are people going to drive it, kind of thing.
Yeah, like when big Hollywood types get into games, that's usually a train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And along those lines, yeah, it's um, you. Jeez, I lost my thought. It's gone now. That's all right. It'll come to me later, I'm sure.
And I guess again, I keep saying one final point, but like we do see like from the independent space a lot of games meant to be more on the artistic side. Like we talked about that game a few weeks ago that was about LGBTQ plus issues, and I mean there's definitely a space for like very emotional or art driven titles, but in the same breath, if you're attaching a price to these emotionally driven or artistic games, you have to like make sure it's something people want to buy, I think.
Yeah, and this is the thought I had just came back to me, and there is something to be said for kind of creating something in a vacuum. There are benefits that come out of that. However, as the developer, when you do that, you have to set your own expectations, saying that this is a game that I'm obviously just making for myself. And if it does well, great. But otherwise, I'm going to get it out there, and maybe it's just like my stepping stool or whatever to kind of go and figure things out. That's my process. But and that's where a lot of innovation comes in, where someone just kind of locks themselves away, just takes their knowledge and their passion with them, and then comes out and says, "Here's what I got, world." But yeah, again, you have to kind of meter your expectations there, because chances are your game is either too different or it's just buggy and whatnot. And I mean, yes, research is probably the best way to go, especially where we want to make money. But again, if you really want to lock yourself away and do it yourself, that's fine. Just don't expect to be a millionaire after that.
Yeah. And again, like we hear from a lot of developers who said, just keep making video games and you'll do well. But if you don't learn from each video game, or you're not really growing, then you're just kind of spinning your wheels. Like we've seen developers who focus on nothing but making retro platformers, but the retro platformers they make, in some cases, are worse than the platformers that they were trying to emulate. And like that is, I think that's when things go too far. Like if you're trying to make an established game or established genre, and your game ends up worse than something 10 to 15 years ago or more, then nobody's going to give you the time of day with that.
Right, and you're absolutely right about that. You got to iterate on your own process and on your own style and polish, or else you're not going to get anywhere. That's an absolute truth. And as far as what news question, should you pay $100 to get on the Steam store? If you're a hobbyist, you probably are. I mean, whether or not you should, you probably are, because your income is already there. You don't care as much about the money. So you're just like, I want to get this game out there, and what better place than Steam? Well, I mean, obviously you're a hobbyist if you think that way, but yeah, it's less about value and more about whether or not they're just going to do it. People like to dive in, myself included, sadly, but I've never spent $100 to get a game on the Steam store.
I kind of see it. Maybe I'm not sure if you'll agree or disagree with this, Rob, in the chat. I kind of see it like the same thing with the YouTuber Twitch personality. Like that opinion that no all press is good press, or bad press is good press, that kind of thing. Like I can put my crappy game, or I can make some like very horrible stream, but as long as people are watching, it will lead to my road to stardom. Like it's an idea like you're always building on top of things, but like for myself, like when I put something out on YouTube or on my site or whatever, I try to make sure it's of a quality that I stand by. Like I have deleted videos and posts because I didn't think it was going to be, I felt like it wasn't going someplace. Like I don't want somebody to find something of mine that is horrible, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, I think your approach is a little bit opposite of what you, the type of personality you're thinking of. I think this is generally when someone dives in, they have no substance, they have all shine, and they think that that's going to be their road to stardom. Is that they're all polish, they've spent all this money on cameras and effects, and they go out there with a crazy, character, not realizing that if they are successful, they have to keep it up for like a decade. You're more along the lines of you have this very solid content, this very solid core, and you're iterating on the rest of it, trying to get it, get that part, because you're still learning that part, but you are working on it. The other people, yeah, I see a lot of people who are younger, especially, who naturally know, like maybe they know OBS really well, and they know how to get all the effects and all that stuff, and maybe they can even make the effects, or they have friends that do that, and sound design and all that stuff. But then they get in and their content is like just screaming or reviewing things terribly. Yes, that's a trip to nowhere. Yeah, you're not going to get anywhere with that unless you have the substance to back it up. And that's the thing that most people can't grab and can't iterate on. And yet it's the best way to kind of get something going. If you don't have content then that people are interested in, then yeah, people will be leaving you in droves.
Yeah. And I could go another 20-minute YouTuber rant right now if you're Rob. I think the audience will like it, but I don't know how many people I would piss off. When I talk with other Josh, we have chats. We basically just air out our frustrations to each other. That's our cathartic release for the week, right? Release for the week when we have our little chats. So I don't know.
Josh squared rants.
Yeah, there we go. That's our new video segment. But yeah, and like taking this back, somehow wrapping this back up to the game design. It's the same thing we see with a lot of these games. Like, you can copy Mario, you can copy Final Fantasy, or anything like that. But I think I've used this analogy before. It's like somebody plagiarizing somebody else's homework, but not understanding, how they got to those answers.
Yeah.
And like we said, like when we play a platformer, like if I'm playing a platformer and your game is less responsive than Super Mario Brothers, like I don't care about anything else at that point. Like your game fails. And like I have a video that I'm making about the idea behind, or the trouble with talking about games being bad, because nobody, like most people, don't set out to make a bad video game, but things can go wrong during the development process, whether you know about it or you may never realize it.
Yeah, I wonder if schools do that, actually, now that you mention it, is just force someone to say, hey, go out and duplicate Super Mario Brothers. Like, just go copy it perfectly. And that would be a great exercise. That trains you how to do some very basics of video game design, and maybe helps you understand the whys and wherefores. But, I would love to see a bunch of people try copying some of these old, very classic games and seeing how successful they are at it. And then, because when I started learning to play bass guitar, the one year that I got really good was I just sat there and I listened to Primus, one album, and I just struggling to remember the title of the album, and just practiced it and played the exact same riffs over and over and over and over again. And then that became my platform to kind of owning my own voice. And I feel like game design would be a great way to do it, is you just copy someone's work, get it perfect, and just try and find your own voice from there, because then you have some building blocks. But yeah, that would be an interesting way to teach someone. I don't know how many schools do that. Sorry, I went off on a little. I diverged a little bit, but um, yeah, I think that. Let's start a school, Josh. Let's do it.
All right. Shark can be an adjunct instructor too.
There you go. $20,000 per semester. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the challenge,
Yes.
though, with your example, Rob, is that I can just imagine someone then thinking like, "This is how all games should be designed." And as you said, like for a lot of like kids and a lot of first timers, they think their way is the best way, and how dare you tell me otherwise? You're out of touch and all that.
Yeah.
But again, like I think the thing that we've learned over the years, or at least what we've seen, is that there are common threads in the very best video games. They're sometimes like very small, but you can sometimes see like why, excuse me, something like Dark Souls works the same way that Super Mario works, or God of War, or anything like that. And it's just very hard to, I think, grasp, why these games are doing well. And there's definitely a greater topic about that whole idea of, I guess, conforming versus striking on your own when it comes to design. I know we've talked about that one before, but there's more to it, I think, than just that kind of like. There's a lot more in terms of, like I don't want to copy somebody else. I want to make my own game. But it's like, I guess going back to the car analogy, it's like trying to build a car without having any background being a mechanic or understanding how a car works to begin with.
That's a good analogy. Yeah, that is a good analogy because yeah, you can be an enthusiast and
Mm-hmm.
love cars and even know how to work on one like on your own, but then you got to then building one from scratch, like
Mm-hmm.
that's insane. And so, let's just say save for the engine because very few people are good enough to make their own engine.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a good analogy. Like you don't have the skills to build a car, you've never done it before, and yet you think you're going to nail it on the first try.
Yep.
Yeah,
And you try to put up on a major store the second you finish your first car.
it's like, yeah, here, you got your dealership. And it's like, well, here's your Ford, here's your Toyota, and then here's the Bicer vehicle. It doesn't have a steering
The
wheel, and
Bicermobile.
the Bicer mobile,
Mm-hmm.
Josh mobile, and
There you
it's got two different types of seats inside, one of which is a rocking chair.
go. Mm-hmm.
It's creative, but it doesn't really get very good mileage.
There's
It gets a
four
zero.
steering wheels and two of them don't do anything. There we go. Or to be artistic, the brake pads are in the back while the accelerator is in the front.
There you go.
Try to make it stand out.
Yeah.
But we kind of went on like a little ranted selection of first topics. So I think we'll do some weird games, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Mortal Kombat. We'll see if we can keep this to about an hour and a half. We'll try. We'll see how things go, though. Alright. So this time, let me pull this up really fast. I have both Ichio and Keymailer on deck. So let's see if this will work without breaking anything.
Okay, so right away I found one that has an unfortunate name, um,
Mm-hmm.
mostly because it is called Get Out, and it's a horror game. And I gotta say, like, that's a really bad place to start. Is have an Academy Award winning reference in your title, and then you don't like. How do you live up to that? You should be more aware of the pop culture references you're using, because this is a very different horror game than the movie Get Out.
Mm-hmm.
That's a you really should know your title. Like do a Google search of your title and see what happens, because if someone types in Get Out and you're expecting them to find your game, that's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Alright, let's see what we got here. A burning rabbit experiment. And I think that's another like thing. Going back to like what we were just saying, many of these each IO games on here are either Ludum Dare challenges or game jam games, and like I don't really think those are meant to be sold. Like
Yeah, I
the
don't
game
get that.
Forager, when I played that, like that was originally a game jam concept, but then he took that and turned that into a full game. It wasn't, here's a game jam, 10 people liked it, I'm putting up to be sold for like however much money.
Yeah, and I feel like a game jam in particular is a bad place to start because, but a lot of them are just like 24, 48 straight hours of development.
Mm-hmm.
If your opinion of your game by the end of that is going to be skewed, you're going to be completely like sleep deprived and exhausted, and your brain's going to be mush. And you're thinking to yourself, "I can sell this." No, that's not a good start.
Mm-hmm. Naming anything is really hard.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of an art to it. Just make it something that kind of represents your game, okay, and at the same time, try not to get into copyright infringement.
Mm-hmm.
So those are relatively that's a difficult thing to do. It's harder than it sounds, but at the same time, you kind of should do it.
Mm-hmm. What?
Ooh, Primal Forge with graphics that are reminiscent of the old Atari adventure game. Um, yeah. I mean, it looks bad, but I'm sure it's great. But it has a style that is a mishmash of like good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm.
I bet there's a lot of work that went into this. No one goes into a game thinking that it's going to be bad, as you've said.
Yeah.
But this one just does not have a good first impression. I'll just say that.
Yeah. And looks like there must be a Ludum Dare challenge going on because there's like dozens and dozens of games with that in their title.
That's so terrible. I do want to read the description of Primal Forge because it's always fun. You are a master of battle. Adapt your skills in combat to suit the scenario. Hone your skills, discover artifacts, and construct weapons of legend. Build yourself from the ground up and establish your title as a warrior of legend. Like again, have someone kind of look that over and edit it a bit. So
I like this one that it's on the store and it says sorry game is not yet playable.
yeah, yeah.
Mm. Man. What? Oh my goodness. And like this, what we were saying earlier, like some of the stuff that people are making, like I don't see any, I guess, design value in it. Like, how are you going to go from this to actually making like a fully fledged game?
Yeah. I'd be interested in your experience there, news about the game jam game that you decided not to sell. I mean, you do. You have to look at it and objectively and say, you know what, this is an exercise. A game jam is an exercise. It's not a commercial endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
It's just practice. And yes, something great can come out of that, but rare. That's very
Mm-hmm.
rare.
I am really afraid to click on any of these pages right now. Let's see. Maybe? Oof. Okay, there's nothing here.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm a little disappointed in my options here. Some of them look good, some of them look meh, but nothing's like standing out. My favorite are the ones that don't really have screenshots.
Then you're just taking a chance there, clicking on that.
Oh, here we got a keyword. We got the keyword challenge in here. Conglomerate 451 is a grid-based dungeon crawling first-person RPG with roguelike elements set in a cyberpunk world.
Whew.
Yeah, it's a mouthful. It looks nice. Ooh, wow! It does. It does have this like Blade Runner feel to it. The art looks very nice. It's just that boy, that was like trying to hit all the keywords for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Blade Runner meets Tron from Runeheads. Can't tell what kind of game it is though. Not really. Oh, it's a dungeon crawling first person RPG with roguelike elements in a cyberpunk world. Okay, done.
And I hope everyone is looking at some of these thumbnail arts.
Yeah. Oh God. They're like MS Paint is making a comeback.
Mm-hmm.
Like what is that? Someone takes a Flash game and makes the cover art out of it. I don't understand.
Mm-mm-mm. Oh my.
Like, you know what? Just go to like some publicly accessible free graphics
Get like
site
some
and just
stock images.
yeah. Oh my god.
Like we
Like
say,
there's
like
free art out there. There's free art out there that's really nice. Just grab a couple of it. And yeah, people don't like that, but it's that horse one, that bus battle one that I see, which why is there a horse? I don't understand that.
mm-hmm.
That looks awful.
Yes.
And banana, like, sheesh. Is this like a sixth grade class that had a game jam and that's their and the teacher's like, oh, and we're gonna sell it at the end so your parents can buy it.
Oh my.
That seems. I think I nailed it on the head there. I think that's exactly what's happening.
There you go. We'll need to have a lesson for our school. Like, what the heck is this? What? Oh. Oh, man. Oh, my. Again, like, there's so many of these games. And, like I said, I am not clicking on any more games here. I think I'm going to avoid that trap.
Yeah, it is. That is gross looking. I gotta say, that is gross looking over there.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff I'm looking at is like super amazing compared to what you're looking.
The stuff you're seeing is like Shovel Knight compared to this.
Yeah, well, yeah, compared. Yeah,
Uh,
and oddly, I'm not seeing as many. Oh, never mind.
there we go.
I was like, I'm not seeing as many, of the anime or whatever type games. Yeah, I just found one.
No, I think your project was better than these Draken when I play like his student project. At least the graphics made sense. All right, now we go from one very weird pool to another.
Okay, I just got to just read the description of this game because it is a. Oh God! Wow, this video is NSFW, NSF anybody. Enter your brain through holographic technology in this X-rated Gradius style
Oh
gameplay.
no. I don't think I want to
yeah.
see that.
I'm not even going to read the name of it because for fear that you'll be tagged just for mentioning this game's title. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm gonna have nightmares tonight.
I think we were all gonna have nightmares tonight.
Sheesh. That was unexpected. That's unexpected.
See. Ooh. So this is basically a worse looking Minecraft. Ooh. Like we're saying, so many people also try to copy Minecraft.
Yeah, that seems like a difficult endeavor. It's like, you know what? I'm going to take one of the most popular and most
Try to make
sold games in the history of the world and copy it.
And it will sell well.
Somehow, and it's like my dad was not familiar with Minecraft, but my niece really loves it. So my dad is looking at Minecraft for the first time, and he's like, that's weird because it doesn't have very good graphics. And I'm like, well, yeah, it doesn't. It innovated. It was like it was the first. It inspired like obviously generation of developers, but yeah, its graphics are unto itself. You shouldn't copy it because it's like copying Dwarf Fortress for its graphics. It's not a good idea. That's not a smart idea if you want to sell games.
And I mean, the games I was showing on Agile Development, like they're not on Steam. Like I don't know, like what their purpose is for being put up there.
I do. I think that they are projects that are being put on just like a school play. You put something out there, the parents have to pay money to come in, and I feel like that's the same thing. I feel like students are making these games and the parents are buying them. and that's just kind of how it's going. Die bloody Nazi die. Ugh, boy, this is
The hell? What is that main character?
like this game. Oddly, Die bloody Nazi die has terrible graphics. Has very typical gameplay. It's a like a twin stick type game, but this person obviously put effort into it because the animation. There's animation there. You know, there's some logic there. There's some thought process. It's terrible art, but you know they obviously put some effort in. And if they wanted to try a little harder and make the art better, it looks like it could be a good game. It looks like one of those kind of games that they made and they're proud of, but could use a couple more iterations.
Mm-hmm. Like you made your first website and you put it up for everyone to see.
Yeah.
Oh my. Mm. And it feels like more people are figuring out ways of getting around like the M-Raid or AO block on Steam.
Here's an interesting one. Jump off the bridge. It's a weird platformer. It looks like it's got a little hint of Meat Boy in it. Or yeah. But it's interesting. An absurd retro platformer that tests your patience. That does not do justice to what I'm looking at. There's one where you're basically jumping on a bunch of yaks so they don't kick you off a bridge. I assume they're yaks. I don't know.
So this game is called Pong, but they spell it with an X. So I'm going to quickly switch our footage just to be on the safe side here. Because again,
how is it spelled Pong in the title, but in the graphic? Oh, I see it here too. It's a VR one.
Oh, good. It is safe.
Yeah, it is safe.
It's our sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Oh my. Oh man, those itch.io games. Fat Dude Simulator.
Ah, that sounds less likely to be. Oh, there's Die Bloody Nazi Die.
Mm-hmm. I do like that game we looked at. Oh, you missed it, Rob. Someone made a game called This Is a Game for You, Josh. That's the name of the game.
That's funny.
What the heck? VR healthcare, running exercise, VR walking and running along beautiful sea beach and Sakura forests. Whew.
That's a good title there.
Mm-hmm.
I assure you, if someone types that title into Google, they will only come up with one result, and that will be your game.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they'd have to know the title first.
This is a good sign. They put the game's called Dear Ashley, but when they put it on Keymailer, they made one word, so it's Dear Ashley. They spelled Ashley wrong.
Oh God.
This is remind me of that scene from The Simpsons, of like Lionel Hutz like trying to cheat a judge at the court, and the judge's like, "Mr. Hutz, this is written on a napkin, and it still says guilty, and you spelled guilty wrong too." Oh my. Oh. Like if I ever like when I go back to like schools and like show kids games, I need to be really careful here. But then why do some games have spaces in them? Okay. Could this be okay? So like this one just seems to be the subject of having a bad name. Yeah. Who's going to type in 4004-022 into a title here?
I don't know.
Graphics have like a 3D pixel look to them.
Here's a game called Giant Slayers, and one of the things in the preview is a boss battle with what looks to be a Stegosaurus. Oh. And it lifts up its foot, and under its foot is an eyeball that you have to shoot. It's a weak spot, which leads me to believe that he doesn't like to walk.
It's gotta be very painful.
Yeah. All right. I think I should stop.
All right, and we're already in May here.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to maze myself.
Oh man, I think just looking at each IO is enough to scar us for the next few days.
Yeah.
Mm, mm, mm.
Oh,
All
it's
right.
the Star Trek coordinates of Earth. I am impressed that that is in your knowledge base. I think that's an interesting bit of trivia. Assuming it's true, Mojo. But
Okay. All right. I think that is enough of that weirdness.
yeah.
So, while my voice is dying on me, the main topic that I want to talk about, or kind of like our one that we were discussing beforehand, has to do with Mortal Kombat 11. And excuse me, and there's been a lot of controversies and discussions around it. But the big one, of course, is the second big one besides the female characters is the microtransactions and their kind of way of having games as a service in a fully priced AAA game. So if you don't know what we're talking about, with Mortal Kombat 11, the big thing that they have, of course, with their new engines is the sheer amount of cosmetic and bonus things you can unlock. There's concept art, there's 3D renderings, there's new costumes, and similar to what they did with Injustice 2, that every character basically can have their outfits modified. It doesn't affect the gameplay, but it allows you to give them a little bit more of a personality to them. So you could give like Johnny Cage like a I don't know like green vest, yellow shades, red pants, whatever you want to do. And I don't know if they're turned on or off for rank play. I've heard that they turn all even the cosmetics for rank, which I think that's kind of a mistake in my book. Yeah, but how it all is tied together is with the unlock system. So the game features, I think, what was it? I think there's 4 different currencies in the game. And of course, because it's Mortal Kombat, currency is spelled with a K, which as somebody who does writing, that annoys me every time I think about it. But you also have the in-game kind of a trophy room design. That's the crypt, again spelled with a K, which is now like its own little adventure. So you open up the treasure chests, you get loot, and you have to pay in-game currency for it. But it all sounds well and good until you realize what this all entails. You see, the treasure chests are random. You don't know what's in them. The only thing you know is what their price is. So I'm assuming that the more expensive the treasure chest, the higher the possibility of loot. But if you run out of in-game currency, your choices are to either grind out combat or spend real money. And then that gets taken further by the fact, no, I'm allergic to cats, both with C and K spellings. But that takes even further with these challenge towers. They're kind of like the idea of like the daily quests, or so that we see in a free-to-play game. The daily towers are skewed to give like the enemy like these crazy advantages, like fight an enemy who regenerates health, or an enemy who can't be interrupted, and things like that. And if you want to get advantages, there's consumables you can get. And guess what? You can spend money to get them. And this is how you unlock. They'll have rewards. The rewards are kind of randomly chosen, but they're fixed. As in, let's say, this day, if I complete the Johnny Cage Tower, I will get X, guaranteed. But then that tower is stupidly difficult. I don't know. I'll have to have one of like those scratch tests to figure that out. Let's see. Can I look this up? It's a good sign that I can't spell Mortal Kombat right now. That's really good. I'm trying to type really fast. Let's see. I'm trying to see if they actually have a list of the consumables. But no. And then there's also there's also a currency you have to spend to unlock new fatalities and brutalities and all that in the game. And somebody did a data mine, and they've estimated that it will take, if you were to buy all the DLC in the game, it will come out to more than $6,000. And as a point of comparison, Dead or Alive had DLC. Let me see.
Is there an updated Jack? And is it higher or lower? Or is that information out there?
Let's see.
And on top of the cost, I'm actually always curious about the time. So, if it costs you X dollars to get everything, how much time does it
Yeah.
take to get everything?
Let's see. There was a rating, or somebody listed this out, and I can't find it right now. And of course, I can't show you any screenshots of Dead or Alive, or I'll also get in trouble for that. And yeah, Train Simulator as well, having lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of DLC. Mm-hmm. So, mm-hmm. And what they've done, though, is that a lot of the stuff that you can grind, like behind the challenge towers, they make that very hard. And they even feature, like this is very much monetization or free-to-play design. They feature another currency that allows you to just buy something you want directly. But of course, that is super premium, currency there. Like you're only gonna get maybe like one or two a drop, and it may cost like 300 to get something. And this has got obviously a lot of people very upset for some obvious reasons. It's a $60 game with microtransactions. They're going to add more in, and it's just such a sharp or a far cry compared to older games or the older Mortal Kombats. Because if you remember, the crypt in Mortal Kombat 9 also had lots and lots of things for you to get, but none of that was tied to a real money purchase. And they've already have for Mortal Kombat 11 the year one or pack one of DLC. So if you buy that, that comes out to $40 on top of the $60 purchase for Mortal Kombat 11. So where are we at? That is what, $110 to buy the game, to buy everything right away. And the Mortal Kombat pack gets you 6 new DLC characters, 1 week early access. I mean, I'm going to stop things right here because I want to ask you, Rob, this question to the chat. Does that early access really work for you in terms of an incentive to spend more money? Because for me, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care. As I had mentioned before, I'm quite fine with that kind of microtransaction. I mean, I think the biggest problem with microtransactions is when it affects gameplay directly, and a lot of times it doesn't. And it sounds like here that's the same. And if you can grind for it as well, I have never purchased microtransactions in a game I've already bought, and I'm usually, if I like the game, I'm fine grinding because that's just more gameplay for me. I understand why someone would buy cosmetic stuff, but I also understand why you'd earn that same cosmetic stuff instead of just the shortcut. Which again, I understand the shortcut, but as long as the game is what I expect it to be, and I can access a certain amount, certainly can't access the end of the game right away, but if I'm unlocking things as I go and I'm able to play the full game and I don't have to worry about spending another dollar, I can just enjoy the game. I think it's fine, and as for people who do buy the microtransactions, unless that microtransaction is set in a way where it's tingling someone's addictive personality, that's where it becomes questionable for me. Is that how hard are you going after that button that you're pressing in that person's brain? Because that can be very predatory.
Mm-hmm.
But where is the line? I don't know in Mortal Kombat 11. I would love to play it. It will be a while before I actually get it or play it or try it because fighting games, as much as I loved Mortal Kombat
Mm-hmm.
2 and 3 in the arcades, it's been a while since I played any fighting games, and it's unlikely I'll get it except when I'm just if it's on sale for cheap and one day I'm feeling just like in a kind of combat game, mentality. So um, the game is too grindy. See, that's important to know. Like if you're playing if you have to play the same thing over and over again, like the same battle,
Mm-hmm.
that can be annoying, especially if the strategy doesn't change or anything like that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're right, News. I am not one of the targets, and that is where I can question it. Is like, are you being predatory to getting those whales? Is that your key demographic? Is that like where you want to get your money? It sounds like if you're selling your game for $60, you're going after the core Mortal Kombat fan base, and then the rest of it is gravy or at least inspiration to make more content. Um, the best way to solve that problem, of course, is to band together as gamers and not buy anything. But again, that's not a choice we have. People are going to spend the money whether or not we all want them to. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I guess it just comes down to as a player, and you're playing Mortal Kombat. Are you enjoying the game enough to where it's okay? Can you shrug it off? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and getting back to what you just said, Rob, about how it doesn't affect the gameplay, that's where things get very tricky to navigate. Because for some people, the gameplay is, dressing up your characters, unlocking these crazy moves, things like that. But when they're being, like, I know I spoke to Ramin about this, like, when they're being spec or tiered explicitly towards the grind, or as Shark's saying again about for the whales or the dolphins, whatever animals we can think of. When you're trying to target people like that is when it becomes very exploitive. Yeah, and like as Shark says, like you don't need to have four different currencies unless you are targeting these people. And I know, like when I spoke to Rami, like we spoke about how these free-to-play designs kind of have the same usual suspects in terms of like what they feature in their game. There's always multiple currencies. There's always the, you know, what was it like the deal of the day, or here's a very expensive currency that just lets you do what you want, but you're going to spend lots of money or or grind the hell out of the game just to get access to it. And like we've said before, like all this changes when you start attaching prices to these things. Like here's what I think would have been like the better option. And I want to ask you and to the chat if you think this would be better. Instead of selling everything piecemeal like they do in Mortal Kombat, what if they instead kind of release, I guess the simplest way to put it would be maybe like crypt expansions, where in let's say like every month or every 2 months, they'll sell you like $20-$30 and you get a brand new area of the crypt with brand new rewards that you can find and unlock. And let's say they could even throw in brand new challenge towers or new things like that. So instead of you spending, again, like having to spend all this money or all this time grinding, you basically get these chunks of content that you can then buy what you want, and then you have like brand new gameplay content to go with it.
Now that is something I can speak directly towards.
Mm-hmm.
In that I am the person who will buy DLC if a game I like Planet Coaster,
Yeah.
Sims, well Sims 3 in particular. Like in Planet Coaster, I just yesterday I was like, oh man, I've missed 2 DLC. I'm buying it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that because I'm such a fan of the game, and I'm very happy when they come out with new content. A couple of times they'll have content that actually changes gameplay a little bit, and I like that. Um, Certainly, I know a lot of people don't. I would like to hear that. It's it is something that I enjoy and I'm happy to do because it means they're just creating more content down the line, and it's usually very polished. It's unlikely that if you give someone DLC to buy, that it's going to be like just hackneyed or shoved out as fast as possible. That is something that a lot of games will fall prey to, especially if they have this kind of currency system. Because in that kind of system, you can't have a store that's complete. You have to have a store that's constantly changing and having
Mm-hmm.
new inventory, or else people are just going to stop buying things
Yep.
and losing interest. But like the DLC thing for me is it's something that I like and I am happy with. I certainly have participated in it and will do so in the future. So
Mm-hmm.
um, it's I like it. I like it, and I participate in it, and I don't feel bad about it. It's like there's never a point in time where I feel
Mm-hmm.
um, regretful of a DLC purchase that I've made for a game I love.
Yeah. And like as we were saying, like it's very easy, like to exploit these kinds of microtransactions if you're not when they're designed like this. And I was talking about the example that Ramin mentioned in the chat there. And again, like we said, like it's how the stuff is being presented that is causing a lot of problems. Because you can feature a game that has hundreds of thousands of doodads and cosmetic items, but when you start attaching prices to them, it starts to get very weird, I think, for some people. Like with the Dead or Alive 6 example, they were saying that there are many fighting game players who argue that that's perfectly fine. Sure, sell, $3 hats or $2 shirts or things like that, because that doesn't affect the game. But the question is, but I think this again, like we're getting philosophical here. What is the attraction for playing this game? And this is something that I think a lot of fighting games and a lot of titles have have been struggling with. Like, is your audience a hardcore fighting game player?
It
If
might
they
be.
are, like, they're not going to give a crap about the cosmetic items because again, like you turn them off for ranked play. So all that DLC, all that stuff you've added in, there's a mark or there's an audience who will never experience and they don't care about. But then you have the market of casual people. The people who are trying to become Mortal Kombat fans. And you're hitting them over the head with all these currencies and microtransactions and replace all the C's with K's in there that you want.
Yeah, microtransaction that Josh will buy into is get rid of all the K's, just replace them with regular spelling.
Mm-hmm. Don't give them that
Spell check
idea. That may be
DLC.
one.
It's like the blood switch, in the
Mm-hmm.
old game on
Yeah.
the Genesis. You can turn on or off blood. You can turn on or off bad spelling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, that's another really good point there, Sean. It's one that a lot of people have been talking about in terms of having regulations for microtransaction loot boxes. Who says that a pair of sunglasses in a game is worth $2.49 and somebody else says a shirt that says I'm with stupid is worth 85 cents? You know, where is like the market value there?
Yeah, that is a weird thing. I remember back in the day, and I know Ramin could probably speak towards this a lot more fluently. When Farmville was
Mm-hmm.
the talk of the town on Facebook, as far as Facebook games were concerned, and going back, I forget, was it Mojo? I forget who was asking what the origin is for
Yeah,
this stuff. Was it Draken? I
I
forget.
think it was Mojo.
So I feel like Zynga is the origin, like the true. Maybe they didn't come up with the concept, but boy, they perfected it. And the market value for some of those items was very questionable, like, and it was mostly cosmetic. So yeah, you can turn your town into like hypercolors. And again, I'm making stuff up. I don't actually know. Hold on a second. Boop. Um, but yeah, the like this is $5, and this, which is the same exact kind of cosmetic change, but maybe a different color or color scheme, it's $6. And and then this other one is 350, and you just wonder, like, well, why is this? They're. It's not like it's IP based. It's not like I'm buying, the the Marvel version of the color scheme, which makes sense, that it would cost a little more. No, it's just a different color. Why is purple more expensive than
Yep.
yellow? That blows my mind. And Farmville was littered with that kind of thing. And when you were talking about just non real money purchases, it was also screwy. Like getting to unlock, say, wheat, like hay bales or something like that, cost more in game currency
Mm-hmm.
than like unlocking another cosmetic thing you could just put in your farm, like stable or whatever. It's neither of them affect the game, or maybe they affect the game slightly, but they're just so wildly variant and so confusing to the outcome of the game. Like if you're a stat head or something, and you are looking to like min max your farm, which is
Mm-hmm.
a crazy concept for a Farmville player. Um, it's almost impossible. It's way more complicated than anything that like anything Runic has come out with. It's just confusing for confusion's sake, and I think Ramin would probably be able to again be very more fluent about that. But I do feel like Zynga kind of started this game, and maybe other people, and they have a famous, like an infamous, I should say, design book filled with all of these like
Mm-hmm.
formulae. But you know, I wonder how many people still understand that math and cater to it just because it works, as opposed to they're designing it themselves because it works. And slot machines are much the same way. Very confusing payout systems, kind of deliberately so.
Yep. And I think that gets again back at the heart of these discussions about why there's an issue with this is that they don't really add to the game. Not only from a value point of view, but just simply in terms of the kind of content that you're doing in this game. Like the challenge towers were just bounce around like a unique situation, and then that's it. Yeah, okay, and then you have a nice little reward. I mean, we see this all the time in older fighting games and even other titles. But the second you throw in that little, like that little consumable, like push, like, oh, you're having trouble? Why don't you use this for $1.99? Like the second that shows up, it throws everything into question.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It really is. It's hard to get behind something like that, and any kind of um, excuse or reason that comes out of a company for it is usually flimsy at best. And a design team probably didn't come up with it, and that's also questionable.
Mm-hmm.
Like the people who made the game didn't say, you know what we need
Mm-hmm.
to really flesh this game out. We need in-app purchases, because otherwise this game doesn't work. No, very few developers would or designers would ever really say that in their initial concepts.
Mm-hmm.
A marketing team seems more likely to say something like that, and that therein lies the question, right? Is this intrinsic to the game, or is it just something that you're kind of trying to get more money out of?
Yep.
I can understand it if you're like, we can't have additional development at this scale unless there's more income coming in, and $60 has been like the price point for games for well over a decade.
Yep.
So we can't raise that price. So we're going to have to figure out another way of making income. If they're honest about that, if that's something they come out and say, hey, this is what we need to do, well, then you go back to that DLC option. It's like, well, then make more content and sell it to us in chunks. That makes sense to me. As opposed to, we're going to target this small niche member of the audience and let them pay for everyone else's experience.
But we're still going to
That's,
feature those systems in our game for
yeah,
everyone to experience. Yeah.
yeah. So it is questionable, and unless someone can come out and say something that makes sense to me as to the whys and wherefores that they implemented it, and it's not something that sounds, just kind of cosmetic at best. It's
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's hard to get behind. Like I said, it really is.
Mm-hmm. And as Shark's saying, it definitely is more psychology in a lot of cases because it's about manipulating people. From like the colors that they use to how they position the different currencies. It's all designed to be to again target a very specific group of people. And like we said, like many of these games that have these heavy microtransactions, like the content itself, used to be free. Or, as we were saying, it used to be delivered in these chunks of DLC. Now, again, it's just a very awkward thing because you know that with Mortal Kombat 11, they're going to be selling the additional characters as microtransactions going forward. I mean, that goes without saying. Do they even have any right now? Yeah, they're already selling both Frost and Shao Kahn at $6 a piece. So right now, if you want to get everything in Mortal Kombat 11, it's what, $122 to buy everything in the game, not including the additional microtransactions. And with something like Frost and Shao Kahn, that is actual content. Those are characters. Oh wait, a minute here. Oh, this is even better. The purchases for those two characters, you can get them for free by playing the game, but they're selling you the option just to skip that. And I don't know, that sounds very weird. Like, again, people will argue that it allows you to get what you want. You have the freedom to, unlock stuff quicker. But you're just kind of hostage-ing, I think, that content. Or making it appear like it's being hostage.
Yeah, it does have that feel to it. To speak to Mike's comment, I think you're right, and News's comment I agree with as well, that a good microtransaction is intrinsic to the game design. But I think my point was that a designer themselves, when thinking of a game, generally doesn't think in terms of like there's no core element that where the microtransaction is absolutely necessary. It is requested that it be put in, and then the designer has to integrate that as a feature that has been demanded from other teams. So I do think a good game, and I imagine Mortal Kombat is this way. Yes, I imagine the designers worked hard to implement this and make it fluid and work. I can't imagine it's not that way. Like, you don't have this a button you press that brings up a completely separate store-looking thing that's art is very different from the rest. To just be wildly speculative here, but I'm guessing it's relatively integrated. I know it's that way in some of the games that I work on. Just to throw that out there. The 2K series.
Now, here's something that I really don't like about Mortal Kombat, how they did this. I said that Frost is unlocked through the campaign, but they give you the $6 option. Apparently, Shao Kahn is not. I think he was a pre-order bonus. So this is one of the things that seems very scummy to me. They're both priced at the same amount. So you would assume that the same rules apply. Like, if you didn't play Mortal Kombat at all, you would think when you're buying this game, that both characters need to be bought to unlock. But no. Like, why are they both priced at the same amount when one character is already included in the game to unlock?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, again, like, this is really raising alarms in my head here.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be back in the day that you could play as Goro. I don't remember if you had to do like some code input or if you just had to beat the game once. Someone else can probably speak to that, but like, that kind of thing is a little weird. Here, we'll let you cheat a little bit and get this character right away. Shao Kahn is exactly not a. There you go. I agree with that, Mike. Pre-order to get Goro. I was talking about Mortal Kombat like 3. My brain is 20 years ago. Dragon. So I don't remember how it initially worked back then, but it is weird to get a character. I imagine that's been hacked by now. If the character already exists in the game, someone's going to hack it out. It's not a downloadable, so.
And the other point from Mike's saying is that many times the cosmetics influence the design or the microtransactions of everything else. So they may throw in eventually you could buy or unlock those characters for free, but it may cost so much currency, so why not just spend $5.99 and do it now? And this is very much the same issue that For Honor ran into. that people were saying that if you wanted to play that game without spending money, it would take I think like 2 years of nonstop playing to unlock what was initially released in that game. And like to me, that sounds crazy. Like again, like there is no game that has 2 years worth of content or 2 years worth of gameplay and nothing else. Like they're not going to add anything else to that. Like that is just insane amount. Like I think that's when the free to play or quote unquote free to play gets a little too extreme. What do you think?
It is, when you're requesting someone play that much of your game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most games will say, back in the day, the value was in hours of gameplay, a lot like that the game gives you. So a game like Final Fantasy had a leg up, but then again, you ask, well, it's all grindy, so that doesn't count. So maybe that's just it. They're just like, well, the grind extends the gameplay, so we can say that there are literal thousands of hours of gameplay here. I mean, that value in particular is less now since there's so many games out there. I almost feel like a tight game like 6 hours is more valuable than a game that's 60 hours in terms of pitching. Because, yeah, who's got the time? But, yeah, I think more and more games are trying to capture the whole amount of time of one of their consumers rather than just, be one of the games that they play.
Yep. And again, that's the point of games as a service, that you don't move on to another game. You just keep playing that game and spending more money on that. So the games, again, goes back to that whole idea of the rich getting richer.
Yeah. Exactly. That is true. 4 years, 1 hour of gameplay per year.
Yep.
Yeah. It used to be like 4 or 6 hours was a reasonable amount of gameplay. Now I feel like it's 10 times that amount.
Yep. And again, like the very weird thing about Mortal Kombat is again like how it's like its whole messaging seems to be all over the place. I think this is one thing that a lot of people have been arguing about, especially with the changes to the the female characters. And again, that could easily segue into the whole sex versus violence discussion, and that is what, another 2 hours? Yeah, we're about an hour and a half in, so we'll probably be wrapping things up in the next few minutes. But it's like on one hand, you're trying to make the characters be more body appropriate. On the other hand, you're ripping out brains and spines. And then with the microtransactions, it doesn't affect anything. Like the competitive players don't care about this. So we're just going to give it all to the casual and the people who are trying to grow this audience with.
I have another like ridiculously outdated reference question for Mortal Kombat for everyone. Do they still have friendships in there, or did they take that out? Does anyone, if they don't, do they know what a friendship is with regards to Mortal Kombat? Because that was one of my favorite parts of Mortal Kombat. I think it was 2. It could have been 3.
Yeah.
Crickets.
I think it was in 2. I don't know if it's in the newest one. Maybe they'll add that in as DLC at some point.
Yeah, because that was just funny to me. That was just funny. And Babalities, that was also just amusing. If you don't know what that is, just look it up on YouTube. It's something that if it's not in there anymore, it should be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely very weird again about what they're trying to do in Mortal Kombat 11. But I don't think we're going to touch the female costume argument here. I think that's a little too much for right now. But to wrap things up about the microtransactions, the one thing that I don't like is that a lot of people were yelling and screaming, and then they, Ed Boon or someone said, "Oh, we're listening, we're going to change it." And "Oh, it's perfectly fine now." I'm like, no, this wasn't a case of somebody accidentally putting the wrong value, saying, there's a big computer that says microtransactions on, microtransactions off, and somebody hit the wrong button. No, this was designed exactly that way. And as Shark said above, this was their way of trying to normalize the extreme microtransactions. And they got called out for it. If nobody complained about it, they weren't changing it. This was not a patch issue.
Yeah, and that just needs to happen more, and developers need to be have their feet held to the fire more with regards to this stuff. And I'm glad that the community, the gaming community as a whole, is pushing against this. They might be losing the battle right now, but I have a feeling if you keep pushing, more and more people are going to get sick of it, and for the right reasons, and it'll diminish. I don't think it's ever going away, but I think it can be reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And I think like the final example would be what they did with Shadows of War. You know, with like the whole microtransaction or grind heavy final chapter. And then like months later they patch it all out. Like if you could just patch it out, how integral was that to your game experience? The
mhm.
answer was it wasn't. That was you trying to get more money. The same thing with SimCity 5 and the always online mode being a required part of that. That was also patched out. It was even hacked beforehand, and it didn't break the game having it be offline.
Yeah, um, that is a great kind of mentality for any piece of your game. If you take it out, does it make things? Does it make your experience worse? No. Well, then get rid of it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think as Draken said, like it's going to get worse unless people more or less, or we see more complaints about it.
Yeah,
But the
I say keep complaining.
yeah. But the problem is there a happy medium? Like, can you sell cosmetic items or have that kind of integration in your game without being considered exploitive? I
I
mean,
think
that's the $1 million
DLC.
question.
I think DLC is the way to go.
Yeah.
I mean, 90 like going back to Planet Coaster. I mean, it's hard to argue that anything in Planet Coaster isn't cosmetic, but there are strategic elements to a lot of this stuff, and even cosmetic stuff affects gameplay. Like there are values that actually affect gameplay. So um, I don't know. Cosmetic stuff is good. I think it's fun to be able to really individualize your characters and stuff, but that could be just part of the game.
Yeah.
There's no reason you have to buy it.
I think what Payday 2 did was probably like my favorite version of that because they sold all the DLC in chunks. You couldn't just buy a new mask or a new gun skin or anything like that. They basically said every month or two we're going to release a $6 pack. And in that pack, you're going to always get a lot. You're going to get like basically a grab bag of content. You're going to get a new mask. You're going to get new mask details. You're going to maybe get a new character. Like they basically standardized their purchases like that. So it wasn't like, oh, you must spend $2 and we're going to give you a new mask. It's you're going to spend $6, but you're going to get a new mask, a new gun, maybe a new character, a new heist, and that's all wrapped up in that price. So that while there was a lot of purchasable content in Payday 2, I'm going to load that up really fast.
I will say, if you're playing an online game, like a fighting game, it is really hard to do DLC that includes a new character because then you can't play that character against someone who doesn't have the DLC. That would cause a whole other ruckus, I think.
Hmm. I actually can't see what the actual price for all the DLC is now because what they did was after like so long, they just made the DLC free. So you could basically get all the DLC, I think, in Payday 2 for free now. Oh, wait a minute. Let me see. Wait, is that right? Actually, now I'm not sure. It's kind of weird how they set things up here. But the point is that again, that I prefer that kind of purchase. That I think we all agree that when you can buy it in chunks or as like one like package instead of individualized, it seems to be a lot fairer in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, you could. By the way, you could do 100% DLC characters if you were playing a 100% streamed game.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way to handle it because then the server would be controlling all of it. You
Mm-hmm.
you can't have someone else play a character online that you don't have in your game somewhere, which means it's just going to get hacked and it's free for all, more or less.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then, of course, you run into the balancing issues. Like, we've heard many people accuse Riot of over-tuning new characters to get those day one purchases.
Yeah, I feel like Dota's probably the same way. So Valve, I'm sure it is. Like, how like you have a new character. I mean, you've got over 100. How do you get any interest
You
in
make them
some
better.
new character if it takes a long time just to get good at one? So if you're like good at 5 characters and another one comes out, how much time are you going to dedicate to that unless they incentivize it?
Yeah. And here's my final point, because I think this is a big one we didn't touch on yet. What do you think about being able to buy and sell cosmetic items? Because that opens up a whole nother dimension of discussions. Like in Counter Strike, or I think Payday 2 lets you sell some of those cosmetics too.
I mean, that is tough because it's more fair in terms of
Yeah.
microtransactions. If me as a consumer can take an item and then resell it and maybe be able to take that and put it towards another item, but it opens up a whole big problem of
Yep.
anytime a game has had like a store that everyone can access. Well, boy, you got like money laundering
Yep.
and all kinds of schemes coming in, and that is legal troubles no one wants. So, um,
Unless you do a lot of lay work beforehand, like something like Second Life did, or
mhm,
EVE Online.
yeah,
hmm That's a really good question, Mojo. Again, the game industry moves at such a faster speed that a lot of places either don't catch up, or most people don't really think about that. Like, they're just, again, focusing on the game. I guess, what do you think, Rob?
I think you can only do so much, and most places know that you can't overspend on
Mm-hmm.
keeping out piracy and hacking. You just can't because it's a waste of money. Just too many smart people out there who know how to dig through code and unlock stuff. Too
Yeah.
many.
What were you talking about, Shark? In terms, you mean of EVE Online and Second Life? Again, the 5 second delay of the chat here.
Always fun.
Mm-hmm. So it's really annoying me. Like on their Steam description page for Mortal Kombat, some things are spelled correctly with a C, other ones are spelled with a K. Like, it's just random now. The economy in I know with Second Life, they actually have like a real market of like Second Life items and goods. Like, they actually had to talk to governments, get it all like squared away with international banks, things like that. I did a podcast with them a long time ago that I think we talked more about it there.
I think I heard that one.
Yeah,
Of the few podcasts I heard your talk with the Second Life guys
yeah.
or guy.
But I mean, they did a lot to get that game set up. Like, there's actual like commodities and all that in terms of the virtual goods. Like, they try to make it as legitimate of a marketplace as I think any video game could. But again,
Yeah,
most developers aren't thinking that far ahead. All right,
it's
I'll see if
true.
I can link it in. I'll see if I can find it on Game Wisdom and send it over on the Discord.
That does bring up a point, and that's way beyond our scope of discussion right
Mm-hmm.
now. But like, if you're going to make a store, you better have a really solid grasp on economy,
Yep,
because
and
otherwise you're just
security
going to have
too.
insecurity. Because then you're just going to have something broken that you're adding to your game.
Yep. All right, but I think we will wrap it up here because we're just under 2 hours. And like I said, I'm going to be leaving this cast up, complete. I want to see how people respond to it like that. I'll still try cutting it up into more of our little chunks. But for everybody watching this live or recorded, new or old, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check out our Discord channel, link down below. If you like support Game Wisdom, the Patreon is listed down there. And we still have a few days left if you want to get those Josh boxes for the end of April. But Rob, it was great hanging out with you. Hopefully, we'll see you on next week.
Yeah, sounds good. I will do everything in my power to be here again.
All right, I'll be back around 9:30 ET for our next stream. So everybody, have a great rest of the Sunday afternoon, and we'll see you all next time with another great discussion.